Hey guys, so it's been a crazy week in the world of crypto and especially in the world of Qubic and KAS. And these crypto projects in a way have been at war. And by titling a video this way, Qubic versus KAS, I'm just poking the bear a bit, really for engagement. I'm just going to talk about what's been going on more or less, and I'm going to explain then, where these two projects are at and why. Probably one is in a far better position right now, and then over time things could change, and another then is a little bit more risky, but probably has a really good return, possibility for return anyway. So that's what I'm going to talk about in this video, just the war that seems to be going on right now, between KAS and Qubic, and we'll look at where they're both at. So let's get into it. So yeah, before I start in this video, I want to share, or start into talking about KAS and Qubic and that whole war situation that's been going on. I want to talk firstly just a little bit about, just me and you and anyone who's invested in a cryptocurrency, and how maybe it's possible that you could be attaching your ego to a crypto, and I definitely do it as well. So this is just a post I made on X recently, and I just said, this is a question for every KAS, Qubic, Bitcoin, XRP, Ethereum holder, or any type of crypto holder out there. Is your ego attached to your investment? I have seen it in myself. This is really important. I'll talk about this more as we go through this video, but I've seen this happen in myself. And at times I can get irritated that people argue against my investments and point out vulnerabilities in my investments. My gut reaction is to defend the project rather than rationally think if the question is useful. I even could probably come close to a physical fight if someone pushed me enough on my investment, if I had a few beers. I mean, when someone threatens a project that I'm invested in and I believe in, it's a weird thing that can happen where you can get really defensive and almost feel like you're being attacked or threatened. So why does this happen to us? And it's just human psychology. When we attach ourselves to something, we become part of a gang, and we defend our gang against other people's gangs. Our gang shouts, our project is the best. We hear this in an echo chamber, because generally we're all in echo chambers on X and YouTube. We're always getting fed more and more by algorithms of what we've watched and seen in the past. And then when someone puts our project down, it is like a physical attack on our gang, so we defend it. We also attach our ego to our projects. This is all really primitive psychology, or primitive things that are going on in our brain, that you can see it in animals, and we think that we're not like animals, but it's in us. If our project succeeds, we see ourselves as successful, and we're able to say, I was right, you were wrong. But if our project fails, we are ashamed and embarrassed, we were wrong. Our egos actually see being wrong as the worst thing possible. It is like death. This is an undesirable trait left over from our evolution from primates, and it rarely serves us well. And here's just examples of, if you look back at similar kind of things in the past, people sporting soccer teams, attaching their ego to soccer teams, and then holy wars, people attacking other nations just based on fucking religions. It's crazy, really. And it's all ego being just attached to beliefs. So what are other examples of this? So yeah, have you ever supported a sports team? Have you ever felt elation when your team wins? Have you ever felt the depression when they lose? Have you ever gotten into a verbal or physical fight with someone when they insult your team? And the reason you do this is because your ego is attached to this team. In the past with sports, I've had things where I get so elated for a week after a sports team or athlete wins that I'm attached to, that I've attached my ego to, and I can feel depression for a week after, like I've actually lost something because I've backed this person or sport or team so much. So even though you aren't playing, you still feel like you lost or you won or you were insulted. Have you ever felt this way about religion or about your country or about politics? Do statements about these things annoy you and make you feel under threat? Do you find yourself typing angry responses on X to questions that you actually don't know the answers to? And the conclusion here is attaching your ego to things isn't a good way to live your life, and especially a bad way to invest, a really bad way. If you want to evolve, try to be okay with losing or being wrong. Next time you see a question about your favorite crypto project, ask yourself, is this a legitimate question? Do I know the answer to this question? And look at your emotional response. Do you feel angry? Do you feel irritated? Do you feel threatened? Does your ego think you are under attack? Do you instantly respond by attacking? Now, I'm saying a lot of you there, but let's talk about me for a second. My ego is 100% attached to Qubic, even though my portfolio consists of Qubic and then KAS and Tau are, big ones that I'm looking at in this run that are in my portfolio. And I look at KAS as the safest option, the best option, the least risk, almost a guaranteed super big return. But I got into KAS a bit later than most people. It was around 10 cents when I bought into KAS. So I really missed the train on that. And part of me, I guess, then because, then I went for Qubic as I looked at Qubic and I saw, okay, this is a lot riskier, but the return potential on this, if it does what it's setting out to do, is going to be huge. So a bigger part of my portfolio is in Qubic. So straight away, I've got a bias towards Qubic and my ego's attached to it. Then when I'm on X, I post, and I make more YouTube videos specifically about Qubic than I do any other crypto. And a lot of people comment back and they have a go at it and they say things that aren't true and sometimes are true. And then I end up defending it so much, legitimately defending it. But again, my ego's getting more and more attached to it all the time. And I have to stay open-minded and realize that it doesn't matter if Qubic succeeds or not, really. All that matters are my investment choices and making money. I mean, I don't actually care about Qubic, KAS, or Tau, or any crypto. I just care about making money out of an investment for my family because I care about my family. And I want all these projects to succeed for you guys listening, for everyone's family. I just want everyone to be a success. But it's hard sometimes. You got to watch for this ego in yourself. And we all have them, unless you're like Eckhart Tolle or Buddha or something like that. You're most likely going to have an ego and it's going to be attaching to things all the time. So it's a cool thing just to watch out for. The reason I'm sharing this isn't to preach at you, but to kind of just talk about this war that we're having between certain crypto projects. So, can you calm all of the above natural feelings, disconnect your ego and answer honestly? Attaching your ego to things isn't bad. It's a natural thing to do, so don't feel bad for doing it, but do try to be aware when you're doing it. I'm not coming from a place of knowing everything here. I struggle with my ego every day, as I said, and it's a constant learning curve for me, but I'm doing my best with it that I can. So yeah, I want to talk about Kaspa. First of all, I want to talk about Kaspa and Qubic and just what's going on with these two projects in a positive sense rather than all the rubbish that you're hearing. Kaspa, so much stuff's going on, but just big ones to pick out right now is the Kaspa Industrial Initiative. And this is a really big deal because this is a whole section of Kaspa now that is dedicated to finding real-world use cases for KAS. Because obviously KAS is already a super superior technology that there's no match for right now, but there's no real-world use cases right now. But there is real-world use cases, but there's no one using it in those real-world use cases, like 99% of crypto. So what this industrial initiative has set up to do is actually go out and actively try to find industries like supply chain, the DeFi, you name it, actually seeing how KAS can work. So like, energy, public sector, things like that, can see how their problems can be solved with KAS and they can become more efficient. This is a really, really big deal and it's a really cool thing to see. And this is going to bring KAS to the next level. Then if you look at KAS, first of all, as far as price goes, it's one of the best performing crypto projects out there. While other projects keep falling in price, KAS has shot up from around 10 cents only a few months ago, and now it's holding around 18 cents all the time. And it's actually climbing the crypto charts all the time just by holding its price because other projects are falling. But then when you look at the hash rate of KAS, which basically just relates to the amount of people who are mining it. It has been shooting up exponentially lately, and it's actually that the hash rate is going above the price of KAS right now. And what this means is that, as we know, Mara, one of the top mining companies in the world, has for the first time, it used to always only mine Bitcoin, but now it started mining KAS as well. Most likely there's other huge big players that have come into mining KAS, and they all know about it. And, you know, Michael Saylor, one of the top Bitcoin investors and people that's been all about Bitcoin, you can see him dropping hints that he's invested in KAS. And look, nothing's guaranteed in crypto, but this is as close to a guarantee as you're probably ever going to get. Most likely KAS is going to shoot into the top 10, top 5, top 3 cryptos, and possibly at some point top 2. Do I think any crypto is going to pass out Bitcoin just because it's the poster boy? Probably not for a long time, but KAS is that crypto, and it's still right now out of, you know, market cap of around 4 billion or whatever it is. It's still a super investment, like really low risk, almost guaranteed to succeed, with the biggest OGs ever in crypto, and it's just an amazing project, and it's just so low risk and such a high return that you can get out of your investment. Couldn't recommend it more. And then when we talk about Qubic on the other end, then Qubic has introduced the Qubic grants program, so they're giving grants to developers to start developing their projects on the Qubic network. And they've introduced the Valis team, which, you know, has introduced then the Valis wallet, which was normally formerly the Q wallet and Q Explorer, and then they're upgrading all those and the Qubic DEX, and they're also then working on Qubic liquidity pools and Q Earn, then, as among many other things, where you can earn passive income from staking Qubic. Really big deal, and it shows, as much as people don't think that Qubic is, or some people will say that Qubic isn't progressing, it's really clear that this is very advanced for a project that's only a couple of years old. And then Qubic Capital is a network, or a new network where, and I'll talk about these in more detail in another video, but you can sign up and actually buy shares in IPOs, IPO shares in projects on the Qubic network that you couldn't afford initially to buy a whole share of. So you can go maybe put like 50 quid in and get a percentage of a share of a project like QDEX, and through that you earn passive income, and you can earn a lot of passive income that way. So just a really big deal of this, and worth we're paying attention to, that Qubic is progressing and doing a lot of great stuff. And then we get on to the war, and this war is a lot of he said, she said sort of stuff, but basically what it comes down to, and you can track this back to last year and probably further, and it doesn't matter who started it, but most likely it was started by Sergey Ivancheglo, the creator of Qubic, and then most of the KAS developers don't really care to comment on things, but he just seems to basically have a beef with Shai Desh, who is a developer and one of the creators of KAS, and they're just having back and forwards, and it's silly. Now, these guys are super smart guys, but you often see this, is you get these super smart guys, and again, they have big egos, and they just don't think about the world in the way other people do, and they don't really care in some respects, and that seems to be the case with Shai, and it definitely seems to be the case with Sergey Ivancheglo. I mean, autism, English isn't his first language. I think he speaks very little English, actually, and I think he likes messing with people's heads, and it's a bit twisted, and he's a bit mental, but I also think he's probably a genius also, but who knows, but I think he probably is. So that's kind of what's causing all this argument, and it's probably started by Sergey. I don't know, I can't go back through time or see where everything starts from, but that seems to be the case. But anyway, Shai posted a few days ago that Qubic doesn't want people commenting on the project, and then within 2 days, people just pissed him off enough that he completely changed and had to say loads about Qubic then, which started a big big argument. And, when I read this is what I mean when I talk about ego getting triggered. My ego was getting triggered reading this. I wanted to defend Qubic, but then I was like, well, let's see what he's saying and how much truth's in it. And it's interesting because there's a lot of truth in this, but also, as much as Shai denies later on, I think a lot of emotion in this as well. So let's break this down. So, he says, okay, I tried to be nice about this and only got flamed in return. Now, firstly, I feel like he was expecting to make this response, because you don't say, I don't want to talk about a project, and then when, just general idiots, and I don't mean Sergei Ivancheglo, but just general people out there that are maxis for projects coming back within 2 days, then you do a complete turnaround. It's pointless. But he said, so I see no reason to hold back my honest opinion any longer. I don't see a reality where Qubic exists 2 years from now. Now, instantly, this is a point where I'm not going to agree with Shai. Is that Qubic, there's nothing to suggest that Qubic wouldn't exist in 2 years. It's already got smart contracts. It's already got decentralized apps on it. It's already got feeless transactions. If you check Qubic Explorer, apparently you can see the trading volume that can be achieved with it, or the transactions per second. I don't know if that's true, but it's a working layer 1 blockchain, no matter what you think. And if you look at Sergei Ivancheglo's past projects, which are NXT and IOTA, both of them still exist right now. Whether they've dumps or the price has gone down a lot in that time, they both exist right now. So just to make the point, I'm not saying that Qubic will be successful in 2 years. I'm not going to say that now, but what I'm saying is that to think that it won't exist from 2 years from now just isn't based on any fact. So that's a interesting kind of point straight away. That just makes me think this is a bit emotional. So this will be the last time I ever acknowledge Qubic or CFB, he said. The founder of Qubic has a history of failed projects. Qubic is just a rerun of his conduct, repeating the same patterns that caused previous projects to fail: sloppy scientific standard, compartmentalization of crucial information. Sorry, I'm so bad at pronouncing big words. Bullying those who try to be professionally critical of his work, either by rude harassment or by threats of litigation, and so on. This leads me to believe that, like we've seen in NXT IOTA, which has managed to survive him somehow, mostly by trashing all of his work, and Jin, the groundbreaking ternary CPU that'll revolutionize Internet of Things any minute now, despite requiring a whole new architectural paradigm while only providing 6% improvement in processing efficiency. The gaping existential questions about the foundational basis of Qubic will never be answered. Okay. And I'm going to start talking about what I agree with Shai in a moment. But I just want to talk about here with NXT or IOTA being failed projects. Now, like I said, both these projects still exist right now. NXT being the first proof of stake project ever, one of the most cited white papers ever. So I wouldn't say it was a failure, but it's probably more like a college experiment that had its use, and then Sergey moved on to bigger things. In some respects, you got to respect that, because Ethereum is almost like a failed college project at this point that was amazing, revolutionized things, but now the whole Ethereum team just sticks with the project rather than maybe just moving on to something right from scratch that they can get correct. So I wouldn't say NXT is a failure. Now, IOTA was the first implementation of DAG technology ever. It cited the KAS white paper a lot of times, which is important to note. And now KAS is a ghost DAG, but the first DAG that ever came was created by a team. First DAG crypto project that ever came was created by a team that included Sergei Ivancheglo, and that's a big deal. It doesn't seem to be a great implementation of DAG technology, but it was the first one, and it opened up the doors to a lot of DAG projects after that. And now KAS is the ultimate implementation of that, which is the Ghost DAG. And I made some confusing remarks on X this week, and people quite rightly pointed out, I'm not saying that in any way that KAS is influenced by Sergei Ivancheglo or IOTA, but I'm just saying that IOTA was a pretty cool project and it worked well, and it's still got a market cap that's pretty high, and it's done well as a project, and it still exists. Then when they say that they trashed most of his work, I mean, there's a lot of he said, she said stuff in there. I don't really care about that, but it seems like Sergey wants to go one way with the project and the IOTA team wants to go another way with the project. So on one hand, people will say IOTA has failed because of Sergey, but then if you look at it, really IOTA has failed after Sergey left. So that's another way of looking at it. And then really you can't even say that IOTA has completely failed as a project. So it's a lot of he said, she said stuff, and I get that. And then when he talks about he bullies people who try to be professionally critical of his work, I do agree that Sergey Ivancheglo could be a lot more humble and grown up in the way he responds to criticism. But then, when we talk about threats of litigation and stuff like that, that wasn't just from Sergey Ivancheglo, it was from the whole IOTA team, as far as I know. So it's a lot of he said, she said stuff. I don't think any of this really matters in the case of Qubic personally, but I will tell you in a second what does matter, and it's a good point. So he said the project pretends to be decentralized, but there are no real answers to any questions, including serious existential questions. I have read the entire website cover to cover, and any other piece of information I could find. All questions are deferred to the founder, who either snarkily deflects them or instructs the asker to wait for the white paper. And that's 100% a fair point and an issue I have. Now, Ivancheglo would say, well, just look at Nick Szabo's paper on quorum technology and you'll understand that Qubic is decentralized and secure. And I've got to look into that more, but that's what he'll say. And then he'll say, other than that, just wait for a white paper, which isn't a good answer in my opinion. They said, if you visit the website, you'll find that it clearly states that the white paper will only be published once development is complete. That's right, questions that must have answers before the first line of production code is written, not to mention launching a fucking mainnet, will be answered arguably never. Again, fair point, I'm not going to argue with that. And he said, and these questions are, nothing crucial, just the most basic assumptions the project relies on. That is, they claim to use AI for proof of work, but nobody knows how the difficulty of AI work is defined or how the work is verified. They claim to be decentralized, but the AI problems are chosen by a single arbitrator. How is the arbitrator chosen? Is it voted upon by nodes? What protects it from Sybil attacks? Nobody knows. What guarantees it's being impartial and does not apply censorship? Nobody knows. How would a malicious arbitrator affect the network? Could it bring it down, and so on? And the list goes on. Now, I have a fair idea of how Qubic is protected from a Sybil attack, but I think the whole, and how the arbitrator can't be malicious and get folded out. But the whole point that Shai makes here is really, really true and important. Is there's no white paper behind Qubic, no scientific peer-reviewed papers behind Qubic, and that just doesn't really cut it. And I don't know that, Shai is someone who technically understands things. I technically don't understand this stuff enough to be able to argue with him in any way. And what we need for Qubic is a white paper, scientific papers, and peer-reviewed papers. And until then, it's all bullshit, really. Like we don't know how much of any of this is true about Qubic. I've tried to say that before as well. I hope I have said it in videos, but we don't know how much of this is true or certain. So Shai makes a great point, and I cannot argue with any of that. He said, whenever you ask what new things the project brings to the table, the response is either one of the things mentioned above, that as far as we know could be thoroughly broken, or assert claims that have never been demonstrated, like 41 million was 40 million transactions per second, reminds them of Kadana's 480,000 transactions per second. If you strip away all the hypothetical promises and severely unestablished claims, all you're left with is a generic, potentially broken quorum-based BFT, likes of which we have since before Bitcoin. Now that's, again, totally true. Apparently, if you look at Qubic's Explorer, there's a chance to verify the throughput of transactions per second, and as Sergey Ivancheglo will say, by creating a node, you can see that. but it doesn't really matter. It needs to be in peer-reviewed scientific papers and in a white paper, and that's there's no defending that. That is a big deal. Now, in the roadmap for Qubic, apparently those things are coming, but they're not here yet. So that's a big deal, and I cannot argue with Shai in any way whatsoever. He's completely correct there. And then he said the founder's history is bad, like really bad. Every project he was involved in was run to the ground. IOTA deserves a trophy for surviving them, and even that after they had to trash most of his work, NXT and Jin were not so lucky. Now, again, I think I kind of addressed that already, that, NXT, kind of like a college project, was very successful at what it did, but then Sergi moved on to other things. Then I think addressed kind of IOTA. I mean, there's two ways of looking at that. Was it run into the ground because of Sergi, or was it run into the ground because Sergi left? Is another way to look at that. And Jin, I actually don't know anything about that project. So he said a history of lying and taking credit for work he didn't do, e.g. disclosing a vulnerability in our work. Yeah, I don't know what that was all about, but I saw that. I think he was trying to wind KAS up, but I don't like that he does that. And disingenuously criticizing other projects with counterfactualities, including our project. Yeah, it seems to be a thing with Sergei Ivancheglo. He's probably a cool guy, but he seems to love winding people up. And but again, you can't knock a project just because of that. Like, Elon Musk is like that. There's so many great project founders who are like that in some shape or form. Charles Hoskinson is so like that. David Schwartz is so like that. In a different way, Vitalik Buterin is quite strange. I think you'd agree. So many people who work in OpenAI were kind of strange people when you follow them on X. So a lot of these people have these problems. Doesn't mean that they necessarily don't deliver great projects. He said his response to his distinguished research team disclosing a vulnerability in IOTA was so unprofessional that they had described him as a drooling idiot. Now, they actually described the whole IOTA team as drooling idiots, so that's inaccurate as well. And that was an issue with IOTA after they published a report, and he called them frauds and threatened to sue them. Now, maybe he was trying to sue them or the IOTA team, because it wasn't just Sergei Ivancheglo, were trying to sue them because they thought it wasn't fair or wasn't true what they were saying. Like, there's papers out there right now, or articles, that are calling KAS a scam and trying to bring KAS down, and they're 100% not true. I haven't even read them. I just know that they're rubbish, and I see people in the Qubic community annoyingly now sharing these and causing more issues, and they're just rubbish. I'm sure I haven't read them, but there's so much of this he said, she said stuff. I don't know whether any of that's true about IOTA. So that's why I think a lot of this is emotional stuff that's been shared here. He said currently many professionals refuse to work with him on the ground of his response to criticism and vulnerability disclosure. Now, I would well believe a lot of people would not want to work with Sergei Ivancheglo, so totally believe that from Shai as well. And he said, if all the above doesn't bother you, by all means sink your money into Qubic. I don't care. But I, for one, am very skeptical about any significant scientific breakthrough coming from a project with such dodgy leadership and sloppy scientific standard, especially given that he is repeating the exact same patterns that caused his previous failures to the letter. So I'll talk about that in a second again. It seems more likely to me that he has already packed his bags in March, and once he gets bored, he'll move on to the next doomed project. So, right, important things to know about this is definitely I agree with a lot of what he's saying here. And this is why Qubic is a riskier project than KAS, but not anywhere near as risky as most projects coming out right now, or most new projects. Sergei Ivancheglo's kind of been laughed at lately, but like his track record is actually really, really good. The projects for a guy of his age that he's created have been really, really good. But I do agree that some of the ways that he carries himself are not good, and his scientific standard is not up to point. And apparently the Qubic team is working on addressing this in their roadmap, but only time will tell if that happens. Then it seems that from a lot of what Shai has been saying is that he doesn't believe that what Qubic is suggesting that it can do is possible. And that's either a good or a bad thing. I mean, if Qubic can deliver any of what it's saying that it's going to be able to do, that's a really, really exciting thing. And that's going to mean that Qubic, if they can release a white paper or scientific shows that any of this stuff works, then probably Qubic's price is going to go up quite a lot. Then, that constantly referring to his past projects as having failed is misleading. It's not true that his past projects have failed. His past projects have succeeded, but they probably haven't succeeded as a project of super significance, of if you want to say a project that's achieved industry recognition. But in a way, his first project was a really, really great proof of stake project. It was just surpassed then by other proof of stake projects that were better, and it became kind of pointless after that. Then if you look at IOTA, then it was the team want to go in a different direction than him. And there's definitely, it's not good that he's fallen out with teams either. But then to say that he's already packed his bags in March and has left the project, well, it seems like every day he's working on the project, discussing the project, active in the Discord, discussing how he's using Agart, etc. And really what's been stressed here by Shai is that Sergey's been selling Qubic ever since March, and that's why the price is dumped. I say that he'll move on to the next doomed project. And a lot of that stuff's just emotional. For me personally, I think Qubic is risky, but I think this project, even if it delivers nothing, it should increase in value from where it's at now and should increase beyond its all-time high in a bull run. If it can deliver half of what it says that it's going to deliver, this project could go super, super high into a top 10, even a top 5 project. Could be a really big deal. And the signs are that it will do that, because we can already see this is a smart contract ready platform that has smart contracts already. It's got decentralized apps. We can see from the airdrops that it already has is that it could airdrop super, super fast, and it's got feeless transactions. And then we're going to have to see about the Agart stuff. We're going to have to see about that white paper coming out. We're going to have to see how effective the useful proof of work is. But, also Shai said somewhere else that he doesn't even know if useful proof of work is possible. But if you look at Render is a project that runs on useful proof of work as well, and already has a partnership with Apple. So it's obviously possible. So why would we not believe that Qubic has that? But definitely a lot of interesting points from Shai. But personally, I'm still 100% behind Qubic. But I know it's risky. But I know there's a huge return and a huge reward if Qubic does what it's aiming to do. That's all I've got for you today, guys. I'll see you all on the outside.